be God and his angels, do not endanger thy precious soul. Pray that thou mayst depart hence in the road, with whom are the souls of the faithful, and Mary's, I trust, among that number. Pray that thy end may be like hers." "I canna pray, Bess," replied the miller, striking his breast. "The Lord has turned his face from me." "Because thy heart is hardened, Richard," she replied, "that nourishing both black and wicked thoughts. Cast them off our journey, and come home with me." Meanwhile the reeve had sprung across the grave. "Thy answer at once," he said, grasping the miller's arm, and breathing the words in his ears. "Vengeance is in thy power. A word, and it is thine." The miller groaned bitterly. He was sorely tempted. "What's that mon saying to thee, Richard?" inquired Bess. "Oh, dunna ask, but take me away," he answered. "I'm lost else." "Let him lay a finger on you, if he dare," said Bess, sturdily. "Leave him alone. You dunna who he is," whispered the miller. "I can partly guess," she rejoined, "boh ey care nother for mon nor deil when ey'm acting reetly. Come along wi' me, Richard." "Fool!" cried the reeve, in the same low tone as before. "You will lose your revenge, but you will not escape me." And he turned away, while Bess almost carried the trembling and enfeebled miller towards the hostel. Roger Nowell and his friends had only waited the conclusion of the funeral to set forth, and their horses being in readiness, they mounted them on leaving the churchyard, and rode slowly along the lane leading towards Rough Lee. The melancholy scene they had witnessed, and the afflicting circumstances connected with it, had painfully affected the party, and little conversation occurred until they were overtaken by Parson Holden, who, having been made acquainted with their errand by Nicholas, was desirous of accompanying them. Soon after this, also, the reeve of the forest joined them, and on seeing him, Richard sternly demanded why he had aided Mother Chattox in her flight from the churchyard, and what had become of her. "You are entirely mistaken, sir," replied the reeve, with affected astonishment. "I have seen nothing whatever of the old hag, and would rather lend a hand in her capture than abet her flight. I hold all witches in abhorrence, and Mother Chattox especially so." "Your horse looks fresh enough, certainly," said Richard, somewhat shaken in his suspicions. "Where have you been during our stay at Goldshaw? You did not put up at the hostel." "I went to Farmer Johnson's," replied the reeve, "and you will find upon inquiry that my horse has not been out of his stables for the last hour. I myself have been loitering about Bess's grange and farmyard, as your grooms will testify, for they have seen me." "Humph!" exclaimed Richard. "I suppose I must credit assertions made with such confidence, but I could have sworn I saw you ride off with the hag behind you." "I hope I shall never be caught in such bad company, sir," replied the reeve, with a laugh. "If I ride off with any one, it shall not be with an old witch, depend upon it." Though by no means satisfied with the explanation, Richard was forced to be content with it, but he thought he would address a few more questions to the reeve. "Have you any knowledge," he said, "when the boundaries of Pendle Forest were first settled and appointed?" "The first perambulation was made by Henry de Lacy about the middle of the 12th century," replied the reeve. "Pendle Forest, you may be aware, sir, is one of the 4 divisions of the great forest of Blackburnshire, of which the Lacys were lords, the 3 other divisions being Accrington, Trawden, and Rossendale, and it comprehends an extent of about 25 miles, part of which you have traversed to day. At a later period, namely in 1311, after the death of another Henry de Lacy, Earl of Lincoln, the last of his line, and one of the bravest of Edward the First's barons, an inquisition was held in the forest, and it was subdivided into 11 vekeries, one of which is the place to which you are bound, Rough Lee." "The learned Sir Edward Coke defined a vacary to signify a dairy," observed Potts. "Here it means the farm and land as well," replied the reeve; "and the word booth, which is in general use in this district, signifies the mansion erected upon such vacary. Mistress Nutter's residence, for instance, being nothing more than the booth of Rough Lee; while a laund, another local term, is a park enclosed within the forest, for the preservation of the deer, and the convenience of the chase, and of such enclosures we have two, namely, the Old and New Laund. By a commission in the reign of Henry VII., these vaccaries, originally granted only to tenants at will, were converted into copyholds of inheritance. But, and here is a legal point for your consideration, Master Potts, as it seems very questionable whether titles obtained under letters patent are secure, and not unreasonable fears are entertained by the holders of lands lest they should be seized and appropriated by the crown." "Aha! An excellent idea, Master Reeve," exclaimed Potts, his little eyes twinkling with pleasure. "Our gracious and sagacious monarch would grasp at the suggestion, ay, and grasp at the lands too. Many thanks for the hint, good Reeve. I will not fail to profit by it. If their titles are uncertain, the landowners would be glad to compromise the matter with the crown, even to the value of half their estate, rather than lose the whole." "Most assuredly they would," replied the reeve; "and, furthermore, they would pay the lawyer well who could manage the matter adroitly for them. This would answer your purpose better than hunting up witches, Master Potts." "One pursuit does not interfere with the other in the slightest degree, worthy reeve," observed Potts. "I cannot consent to give up my quest of the witches. My honour is concerned in their extermination. But to return to Pendle Forest. The greater part of it has been disafforested, I presume." "It has," replied the other, "and we are now in one of the purlieus." "Purlie is the better word, most excellent reeve," said Potts. "I tell you thus much because you appear to be a man of learning. Manwood, our great authority in such matters, declares a purlie to be a certain territory of ground adjoining unto the forest, mered and bounded with immovable marks, meres, and boundaries, known by matter of record only. And as it applies to the perambulation we are about to make, I may as well repeat what the same learned writer further saith touching marks, meres, and boundaries, and how they may be known. For although, he saith, a forest doth lie open, and not enclosed with hedge, ditch, pale, or stone wall, which some other enclosures have, yet, in the eye and consideration of the law, the same hath as strong an enclosure by these marks, meres, and boundaries, as if there were a brick wall to encircle the same. Marks, learned reeve, are deemed unremovable. Primo, quia omnes mettae forestiae sunt integrae domino regi, and those who take them away are punishable for the trespass at the assizes of the forest. Secundo, because the marks are things that cannot be stirred, as rivers, highways, hills, and the like. Now, such unremovable marks, meres, and boundaries we have between the estate of my excellent client, Master Roger Nowell, and that of Mistress Nutter, so that the matter at issue will be easily decided." A singular smile crossed the reeve's countenance, but he made no observation. "Unless the lady can turn aside streams, remove hills, and pluck up huge trees, we shall win," pursued Potts, with a chuckle. Again the reeve smiled, but he forbore to speak. "You talk of marks, meres, and boundaries, Master Potts," remarked Richard. "Are not the words synonymous?" "Not precisely so, sir," replied the attorney. "There is a slight difference in their signification, which I will explain to you. The words of the statute are metas, meras, et bundas. Now, meta, or mark, is an object rising from the ground, as a church, a wall, or a tree. Mera, or mere, is the space or interval between the forest and the land adjoining, whereupon the mark may chance to stand. And burda is the boundary lying on a level with the forest, as a river, a highway, a pool, or a bog." "I comprehend the distinction," replied Richard. "And now, as we are on the subject," he added to the reeve, "I would gladly know the precise nature of your office." "My duty," replied the other, "is to range daily throughout all the purlieus, or purlies, as Master Potts more properly terms them, and disafforested lands, and inquire into all trespasses and offences against vert or venison, and present them at the King's next court of attachment or swainmote. It is also my business to drive into the forest such wild beasts as have strayed from it, to attend to the lawing and expeditation of mastiffs, and to raise hue and cry against any malefactors or trespassers within the forest." "I will give you the exact words of the statute," said Potts. "Si quis viderit malefactores infra metas forestiae, debet illos capere secundum posse suum, et si non possit, debet levare utisium et clamore." and the penalty of refusing to follow hue and cry is a heavy fine."